Welcome to Perspectives, a podcast where the clergy women of the First United Methodist Church of San Diego share their musings on scripture, theology, and what it has to do with us.
Hi everyone, welcome to Perspectives. I'm Reverend Hannah and I'm here with not just one pastor but two pastors, Reverend Trudy and Reverend Brittany here with me. Hey. Today we are celebrating, we are taking a little break from our ongoing series and having a special celebration of Confirmation Sunday. And we are featuring this episode in honor of our confirmands. So the three of us will be entertaining some questions our teens seem to have about faith. So let me pose those questions for us to talk about.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. So what does following Jesus actually look like in real life?
I'll take it. Well, I think it's a lot harder to follow Jesus than we may think it is. I think that first of all, in order to follow Jesus, we have to know who Jesus was. We have to know where he came from. We had to know what he believed. And Jesus was a person who believed that all people, right, were a part of God's kingdom. All of the people are a part of God's family. And those people should be cared about, and especially those who are on the margins. And when we say the margins, we are talking about people who are poor or women who have been widowed or children who have been orphaned, those kinds of things. So Jesus takes real delight in those folks and being a presence for them and reminding them that they are loved. And so I think if you're going to follow Jesus, you have to do the same. You have to put your feelings sometimes on the back burner in order to care for the needs of others, those who are the most vulnerable. And I also think that you have to be a person who believes that all of God's people deserve to have a good and healthy life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. I'm thinking about myself as a teenager, 13 at confirmation age, roughly, right? I never thought of that.
Really?
No, I never thought of it. But it's part of the journey, right? I think it's part of the journey. And I think that's one of the things that is important to stress for me for confirmation students, just that you're going to learn an awful lot, and this isn't the end of your journey. This is the beginning, and you'll find new and different ways to actually answer these questions for yourself. And it might first start like coming to worship and partaking in the rituals that your church has, that your family delights in. And then you'll begin to understand, no, that you really have to kind of take it outside the church too, to the world, your school or your friends, and your attitude. And then you get to, it took me a while to get to the place where I've got to take care of the folks who don't have it as good as I do. So, and you're right, it is not easy.
It is not easy.
Yeah. So you're the confirmation student. Sorry.
No, the teacher.
The teacher, not the student. The teacher. How would you answer that question?
So it has been interesting that you mentioned your generation and your relationship to the confirmands. And as I was spending time with these 9 beautiful people, I realized I'm their parents' age or older than their parents, and I grew up learning about Christian faith being something metaphysical, something spiritual outside the world, not in real world. So I was trying to connect those two realms, and we try to understand following Jesus as spiritual sphere, but when you think about the scripture, Jesus actually came down to the real world to experience it and all that. So following Jesus for me is like, I'm not my own person. I'm journeying with this friend Jesus. And I would consult with this friend with whatever struggles that I have and about my perspectives and about my view on individuals versus community. So all that, having a friend and journeying with someone else is my understanding of following Jesus. And for us to do that, for me to do that, I often have to stop stop my immediate gut feelings, stop pausing my own struggles, my own understanding of the world, and reading and understanding where Jesus came from and where Jesus was heading to. So it goes back to all the confirmation class stuff. The Wesleyan quadrilateral, we have to go back to study and reflect and make sense of it and experience it. So it's our everyday journey, not our Sunday mark.
It's all that groundwork that they did in confirmation that really goes on throughout their lives, or we hope would.
We hope and
right?
pray.
Because we learn so much, and we have to learn it all, we have to understand it all, and we have to act on it all, right? Yeah. I love the question because it says, what does it look like? It's not what does it believe or what does it, look, I mean, how do you understand it or what do you study about it? It's just, what does it look like? Very, very clear.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks. So do you want to hear the other questions as well?
Yeah. You know what? I love answering theological questions.
Glad to hear.
And I love hearing your perspectives. So, yes.
Okay.
Lay it on us.
I was going to swallow my answers now.
No, we need your perspective.
All right. So the next question we want to talk about is, how do I stay true to my faith in school or with friends who don't believe?
Yeah. Ooh, you know what I hear in that question? I hear this person who is wanting to claim the Christian faith being stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Being stuck with the friend group that she or he they are trying to fit into, right? And yet this calling might put us as a different kind of person to be a Christian, but stuck there and between the church that really puts an emphasis on belief, right? Right? So that's a really good question. I always knew that being a Christian meant love. I mean, I think that was one of the first things I learned. God is love. Jesus loves me. This I know. All of that stuff, right? We used to have these stickers or pins that would say agape love, right? Unconditional love. That's what God has for us. I learned that first and foremost. So I knew that was central. And then I had an experience of just being loved by people who shouldn't have to love me, but they do anyway, right? And they do because they were Christian. So for me, that's what I thought being a Christian looked like. And staying true to it meant that even at school, while the other kids were talking about people who were the goofballs in the class or the stuck-up people or whatever, we had to love them still. We had to still be nice. And we had to accept them. We couldn't judge them anymore. And so for me, I remember literally going through high school, having those moments where I was making the decision to love someone in a situation because that's what Jesus would do, you know?
Yeah. And you must come from Southern California. Your faith tradition seems to be a little more embodied and integrated.
Okay.
So I come from a tradition and from a generation where doctrines and dogmas always often hinders us from freely interacting and letting go of others' differences, especially religious differences. And sadly, I went to 7 years of elementary school, which was founded by Methodist missionaries. So doctrines and dogmas were hardcore in our learning. So it was when I entered middle school, public middle school, that I moved from one place to another. So how do I stay true to my faith in school with people who don't believe was a real question growing up. So at first I try to be a little missional and all those things but
tell them why they should believe what you believe,
yes,
that kind of thing.
and a little evangelistic approach to people you love because you want to convert them.
Right.
But these days, with our confirmands and to our youth and all of us, I think I confess the sin of being a part of a religion that focused on the words. And now I'm reborn to live in a religion where love is honored for everyone in school, regardless of your differences in many things, and especially when you have differences in faith traditions and belief system. So
But I can't imagine that journey that you went on. I mean, that's not an easy thing when doctrine is really emphasized. It's really hard to say, yeah, but I'm just going to walk away. It's really, really hard.
it was a painful years of deconstruction and wilderness. So
That's another podcast, another episode. We'll get to that one.
So
somewhere.
FYI, you shouldn't talk about your life experience with Reverend Trudy.
It's always I'm always thinking.
Yes.
Always thinking. We need to know this.
But that's the conversation we learn
Yeah.
from.
Absolutely.
Just-
And people need that kind of model, honestly, because I think there are a lot of people who leave the church because they think they don't have a place for them if they don't believe. And here we have a pastor who,
on.
there you go. You make it, it's a modeling for it. What about you, Brittany?
I think you guys handled that question beautifully.
Did we close your mouth?
You said all that I could think of.
Yeah. Okay. Was it easy for you to be in school and be a
Christian.
what do you call yourself? An old church lady?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that hard
Yeah.
being a young person, or were you never that way in school?
I mean, what can I say? I didn't have confirmation growing up. I had a believer's baptism when I was 8 years old, and so that was kind of our confirmation wrapped up, where I had to kind of profess my faith and all. And I remember going to school in the second grade and telling all my teachers, I'm getting baptized, and telling all my friends. And I, was very excited. Cool. And I always grew up in an environment where people had questions about what it meant to be a Christian, and I was a little bit more, I didn't do certain things, not necessarily because I was a Christian, but because I felt like an old church lady. Take out the church. I just felt like an old lady, right? So there were just certain things that I just wasn't that into, and my friends kind of knew, don't talk to me about that, because I may not be I'm going to tell you what you don't want to hear. Not necessarily even faith-wise, just in life decisions, right? So yeah, it was, I remember specifically once in second grade, I had a friend who was Muslim, and I did what you did, Hannah. I thought I was supposed to convert my girl.
My God is bigger than
I'm
your
like,
God.
what do you mean you don't follow Jesus? And she was like, I don't. And I remember it very clearly. She said to me, it's okay that we don't agree, and let's just respect each other. And she was in the second grade, right? And so from that conversation, she had to have had that conversation before. Yeah. And it really shut me down in that moment. Not shut me down in she was scolding me, but it really put into perspective, she's my friend. We've been friends for so long. She has her beliefs, I have my beliefs, but we can still hang out and have conversations, and we watch the same TV shows, and we like the same food. And so that's more important than how we worship necessarily. So I don't necessarily think it was hard for me to stay true to my faith. I think my faith was ever evolving throughout my childhood into teenage years, into college, and continues to do so now, if that makes sense.
Great. Glad that we got to hear your story.
Oh, anytime.
Yes. So the next question is similar to our second question, and that is, how should Christians treat people who believe differently?
I think your friend in the second grade had a pretty good response to that.
Yeah, she did. I mean, I think you treat people with care and compassion. Like, we're not always going to all agree on the exact same thing. And that's beyond faith, right? But I do think that there are ways in which we can see the humanity in each other and find commonalities, you know, through our experiences. Like, she was Muslim and I was Christian, right? But we both loved popsicles at lunchtime, right? And so that reminded me that no matter who she is or matter what she believes, she's still a person and she deserves to be valued as such. And I need to make sure that no matter who they are or where they are in the world, that I am meeting them with the love of God, no matter what that looks like. So, yeah, that's my thought.
Yes, and almost every great religion talks about loving others and loving God in a way that works to their own culture and tradition. And your friend, second grade friend, taught us great thing about how to treat other people who believe differently. Beyond the conversion model, I came to honor our common ground as humans. And then I came to respect differences, not just religious differences, but also cultural differences. But it takes a lot of effort navigating through those differences. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of time being close to each other, skin to skin, and being honest and trustworthy and respectful. So I think if my God is awesome, your God is awesome, your God is awesome. And if your religion teaches you to empty yourself, to respect others, all that is good.
That's right. That's right. And I think about high school, and if I remember human development, child development, that's kind of the stage where you really just want to find a place to belong. And so sometimes that we call it tribalism these days. Just finding the people that are in your tribe is important. So to find other Christians, it's really remarkable that you had a friend who was Muslim, right? But I also know that eventually we move beyond that a little bit. And I was just thinking about the digital world we live in and the way in which we have access to so much information about other faith traditions that demystifies it a little bit, that makes it a little bit more accessible to us, that might challenge our own understanding or our own practices, might reveal some deficiencies perhaps, or some things that another faith tradition can help us learn about. And so I'm just kind of putting words into a posture that I've been really developing at times, and that is just the idea that what can I learn about God from the way in which this faith tradition that grew up in a different kind of world, among a different kind of neighborhood, what can I learn from that? And I might find those practices that might be supplement my own faith.
Yes.
You know,
it deepens us.
I think so. It refines us too. It refines us. And believe me, there's plenty I still need to get better at in Christianity. So I'm still working on that one before I grab too much of everything else. But I think it is a part of that compassion that we can show to one another, is just a real respect for that.
Yeah. The question that I have is, how should Christians treat people who believe differently? But my question then would be, how do we treat other Christians who believe differently than we do? Because this idea of Christianity is not, our church is an open and affirming church. We believe that all of God's people are welcome. We welcome our LGBTQAI plus family members. We talk about racial justice. We talk about cultural competency. So that's different than some of the other theology that may be out there. And so I would like to maybe break that up as to what Christianity really looks like and how it's talked about, how other people experience Christianity or express Christianity a little differently than our church. I just wanted to throw that.
Yeah. It's harder, isn't it? It feels a little bit like a sibling that is, hit you in the back,
Right.
Yes.
right?
It's-
You know,
Yes.
Right.
you want to go crying to.
Because with her name was Aman. With Aman, my Muslim friends, it was easy at that time to say, oh, yeah. But then when there's somebody else who's kind of, in my mind, co-opted the gospel or taken Jesus out of
Using
his
the same
context.
God.
Yeah, using the same, like,
To
teachings
abuse
of Jesus.
others.
Exactly. It sends me over the edge a little bit. And so I am curious as to what that looks like for you all when you're trying to bridge that gap, and also, like, what advice do we have for our young people who are seeing Christianity kind of taken out of the context from which they know?
I had a great senior pastor that I worked with, and I loved his theology, his preaching, and he loved my theology as well. And he's a very gentle man, and the worst cussing he would have is...
Wait. Can we record this?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, you're not going to
Pastors
shock
don't
us.
cuss.
Yeah,
I was
don't-
going to say, wait a second.
I've never said
I'm
one
not
in
sure
my
what you're going
life.
to say, but there's a lot I haven't heard.
Go ahead.
So his worst cussing towards someone who has a different belief system within the same church is that person has a narrow perspective.
That's good.
beautiful.
So
That's not what I was saying.
Yeah.
that person has a narrow perspective.
I'm gonna adopt that one.
Yeah, that's a good
So
one.
that brings me the idea of retouching the elephant from different parts. One on the nose, one on the tail, one on the leg, and one on the body part.
Right.
It's the same elephant, but we are blindfolded and we're touching only a part of the mysterious God. So when we have a narrow perspective, we want to argue that God looks like a skinny tail.
Right. That's right.
Right.
But once our vision is widened and we have a bigger perspectives, we can say there may be some aspects of God that we don't even know. And but it's hard. It's easier to understand the concept, but it's harder to embrace people with deep love when we use the same God in different ways. I have to be honest.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. You're not the only one. I think what I would want to tell young people when this happens is to just spend some time really knowing how to articulate what it is you believe. I think we can get in those situations, and not that I'm encouraging people to argue, because that never hardly ever works. It's always much better to just simply love. But I do think for their own well-being, it can be startling to have somebody come up and say, "Well, you're doing Christianity wrong," And so I would really encourage younger people to just really know what it is they believe and be able to articulate why they believe those things, so that they can stand tall while they're living on somebody else who doesn't believe the same thing. Yeah.
And I also think that you don't have to profess that you are a Christian yelling it through the halls. But like you kind of said earlier, Reverend Trudy, they will know that you are a Christian, in my mind, by the way that you show up in love, right? People who often claim, who wear Christianity as a badge of honor, you never really know if they're actually following the Christ that I know, right? Because it feels just performative rather than relationship building, right?
I remember being in college, I did a workbook on how to strengthen your faith with a young adult group that I would belong to. And one of the challenges was you should tell your friend group that you're a Christian. So it was a workbook written by Maxie Dunham, who's a little bit more conservative, so it's a little bit more conservative kind of Christianity. So it had that kind of witness to it. So you need to tell people that you're a Christian. And I remember going to my college friends at lunch one day and say, "Hey guys, I have to tell you something."
So funny.
you know, and I'm like,
Reverend
I
Trudy
hope I
going
do
to-
this witnessing stuff right. That was, that was my one and only kind of foray into that. But I said, I just want you to know that I'm a Christian. And they look at each other like, well, yeah.
Yeah, right. Duh.
And then I'm like, what gave it away?
The cross around your neck, maybe.
But that actually tells us a little bit about the paradigm shift. You went to college in a certain age.
Right.
And that profession of faith was important. Witnessing to faith was important. And as you can see in the next coming Sunday's sermon title, it's not a vibe, it's a way of life.
It's not a vibe, it's a way of life. Great sermon title.
So it's not just a profession of your faith from the 20th century. It's a way of life. Yeah. And these teenagers and my own daughter and the people that I play with don't seem to care about profession of faith as much as we used to do. So it makes me think about the whole confirmation process. So it was easier for me to relate to their experience more than to profession of faith. Just saying.
Good thoughts. Do you have anything else for us today?
One last question.
Okay.
Can you entertain one last question?
I think we can.
Okay.
We going too long?
I'm just kidding.
I don't know.
I'm just kidding. I'm ready, Hannah.
Okay.
Okay.
So how do I know my purpose? Do you know your purpose?
Oh, well, look at her. Saving the best for the last.
Girl.
That's really an interesting question. You want to say something? You want me to say something?
Start it off, Reverend.
Start it off. I think I just look at my life, and over the years, I think it has changed, and how I articulate it has changed too. How do you know it, right? That was the question, right? How do you know your purpose? I think for me, when you feel like you're doing something worthwhile, that you're being challenged, that you're using your gifts, that you're growing and then you're doing good, are all signs that it's fulfilling a good purpose and something that would be worthy of a sense of God's pride in you, right? As if we have to do any of that. So then I have to come back around to say, maybe the purpose is simply being grounded in God, so that whatever you do is an effort to live in that space. And I think God will delight in whatever it is we do then from there. Right?
Yeah. Howard Thurman has a quote that says, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and then go do that, because the world needs people who've come alive. Yeah. And I think that your purpose is the thing, the skill that God has given you, the thing that you just love to do, whether it's music or art or whatever. If it's the thing that you can't let go of, even when you're discouraged, even when you're depressed, even when you're sad, even when you're frustrated, if it's the thing that still excites you, even when it frustrates you deep down in your heart, then I think that's God's way of kind of telling you to lean into that a little bit more. So I think our purpose evolves, but I think for me, there were things that I can remember even from childhood that make a lot of sense as to why I'm here as a pastor. But at the time, I didn't know that I would be a minister. I just felt very strongly about people suffering, and I felt very strongly about injustice. And I didn't have the word for injustice, but I knew what was fair and what wasn't fair. And so that has stuck with me. And even when I'm super down and like, oh, God, what am I doing with myself? I'm constantly reminded that, like, my life matters, and the things that I find valuable and the things that I find to be important are important to God, too. And that the world needs someone to express it in the way that I do. So.
How would you do that?
My two indicators are joy and peace? Do I find joy in doing this? Am I peaceful about the shortcomings and mistakes that I make in doing these things? Do I have room for God in the things that I do? And am I contributing to other people in my relationship with God and in the things that I do? So if I lose my joy and peace, I know that I'm not living out my purpose. So that's the simple one.
I want to be Hannah Kaw when I grow up.
Girl, because I'm like joy and peace.
I'm thinking, what is that?
That's what I'm
What
like,
is
peace.
that?
Girl, peace,
Did I just sound like
peace.
a preacher?
You sounded so
Child.
peaceful and joyful, actually. You sounded so lovely. And yes, absolutely.
You know how much I mess up each day.
Well,
But at the end of the day,
yeah.
there's that
Yeah.
peace-seeking
That you feel
moment.
good. Yeah, yeah.
Let me touch the hem of your garment.
Well,
so that
there
I
you
might
go.
be
There you
blessed.
go.
Okay.
But, you know, in all honesty, I mean, I think I express the joy I feel and the peace I have differently. You know, I carry it differently. But it's there.
It's
It is
there.
there.
It's for
It is there.
the-
And as you said, even no matter how frustrating you
Deep-
feel for
Deep
whatever.
You see how I talked about the frustration and Hannah talked about the joy? That's what we need, baby.
Well, well, each person will know, despite the different articulations. You talked about it. You talked about it. I just had those two words in
There
my
you go.
brain, but we all know.
Yeah, yeah. I'll add one more thing that might be helpful. I remember being a teen thinking that the decisions I would make, you know, which college to go to school, what I would, you know, major in, those kinds of things were so definitive of life. Oh my gosh. How many decisions have we made since then, right?
Right.
But
Where
it's-
did we end up?
Right, right. But I have found that, as you said, the purpose changes to a certain extent in terms of how we actually live it out. And we're clergy, we call it the call, right? The call on our hearts, on our lives. It changes. Once you answer something, you know, you're in a different place. And so if you're keeping to grow, you're going to get another call because you got someplace else to grow.
Yep.
We are organic life. God doesn't place us in one place like a table and let us sit still.
Right. And what I will also add to that, I think we've talked about this before, but we talk about spiritual gifts. You know, what are your gifts, right? And you identify them. You take the spiritual gifts inventory. Is that still a thing? You used to do that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. You have these gifts, and then you begin to use them, and you begin to answer a call with them, and then I find pretty soon I have a few more gifts because I've answered the call. And my call then will change, and it's a continual growing pattern. And I always talk to folks who are being called into ministry at the very beginning stages of it, and they're paranoid because they're thinking, how on earth can I ever do what I see you doing in a big church on Sunday morning or whatever? And I'll say, you know, you're not there yet. One step at a time. God will provide as you go.
So I think purpose and faith are ever evolving, and they'll continue to evolve, like you just said, throughout our
It
lives.
evolves in relationship with God and in relationship with others around us, others who may be different from us as well.
That's right. That's right. And I think it's really important to remember that it goes. What's the old thing? It goes up and it goes out. Just like a cross, right?
Just like
Yeah, it goes up, your relationship with God, your understanding, your growing, all of that stuff, and your relationship to others. And I would say on one hand, you have the community of faith, whatever that ends up being for you, that can help you when your faith gets thin and support you in all of life. But also the other side, other arm of the horizontal arm of the cross, is the people who are different from you. It's got to be all of it.
Awesome. That's a great ending for this beautiful conversation. Unless you have anything else to add to our conversation.
I would just say I had a professor in divinity school, Dr. Dale P. Andrews, God rest his soul, and he would end every class by saying, I have more questions than answers and more problems than solutions. Of these gifts I freely give. And so confirmation, youth, confirmands, go out into the world and know that you'll have some questions, and that's okay.
Absolutely.
And also to our parents and grandparents of our confirmands or whose grandchildren are youth, now I'm pleading to you. Ask questions to your teens rather than trying to convert them. And have a conversation about their understanding and be in their ground. And once you get to hear God working through them and the wisdom that they receive without knowing that it was from God, you might be able to relate to them deeper and closer.
There you go.
And your faith might be grown and evolved as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I will talk to all of the rest of you who really aren't a parent or a grandparent of a confirmand, but you're just curious about our perspective. I invite you to consider your own perspective around these same questions. So I'm going to read them to you one more time. What does following Jesus actually look like in real life? How do you stay true to your faith in life in general, in work, in the grocery store, on the road? We always have to add the on the road. Or with friends who don't believe? And how should Christians treat people who believe differently? What do you think about that? And how do you know your purpose? That's our perspective on these things. We hope you will consider your perspective and talk with others about it. Let us know what you're thinking. And once again, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
This is a production of First United Methodist Church of San Diego. To learn more about our events and ministries and to access additional learning resources, visit fumcsd.org.